Great. Well, thank you all for attending today's interface, which is sponsored by ASU, which is why I have the pleasure of introducing our most awesome speaker today, Supervisor Steve Christy. I've known Steve for a very long time. I don't even know how long. It feels like forever, but I first got to know him when he was on the ADOT board, and since then have had the pleasure of working with him as in his role as Pima County Supervisor, which he has been serving for almost 4 years. So I know there's probably a lot that he wants to say about what's happening in the community with the businesses and what the county is doing about it. And so I will toss the microphone over to you and let you go ahead and speak, Steve. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here. I have, as you know, a real connection with the Tucson Metro Chamber, having served on its board for a number of years and being a past chairman. And I think now more than ever is the time for activation and involvement by the Tucson Chamber on so many different business levels. It's really imperative. First and foremost, without going into all the details of what this what the proclamations and the inhibitions and prohibitions have meant to small businesses, I want to bring everybody up to date on a couple of developments at the board level. 2 board meetings ago, I made a motion that we reactivate a number of our commissions that on March 17th, the board deactivated due to the fact that county resources we were told needed to be spent in other areas, and the focus and attention needed to be on the coronavirus epidemic, and consequently the board as well as the county administrator felt it was in the best interest to shut down a lot of the commissions. But they did keep the Board of Health open, and they did keep Planning and Zoning open, and they did keep, of course, the Board of Supervisors open. And as the pandemic spread and businesses began to suffer more and more, and people were being put out of work at a quicker rate, I felt it was imperative that several of the inactive or inactivated commissions and boards be reactivated. And one of them, I asked for 3 of them. One of them was the Small Business Commission, and that received a very unusual 5-0 unanimous vote of the board to do exactly that. So we were able to reactivate the Small Business Commission. I wanted to also reactivate the Elections Integrity Commission. For obvious reasons, we're in the middle of an election cycle, and I think that we need transparency and citizen guidance and input in that whole process to make sure that our process is being conducted in a way that brings trust and integrity to it. That got voted down along party lines 3-2. So that Elections Integrity Commission is still inactive. And the third board and commission that I wanted to reactivate was this Pima County Transportation Advisory Committee. And I did that, I put that forward because I felt it's important that even though we are swamped with this virus and with all the ill effects that it's producing, we still have to maintain a semblance of keeping our priorities as a county on the front burner. And of course, I've always been of the belief and a strong proponent that the number one issue that we have in Pima County has been and is not, and not necessarily is now, but has been prior to the current one, is the fact that our infrastructure and roads need to be maintained and taken care of. That was not reactivated. That got that died for a lack of a second. So 1 out of 3 we were able to reactivate. So going to the Small Business Commission, they've already met once. They've got a terrific group of people that are small business owners, very active. Kent Blumenthal is the current chairman. He is highly energized and highly motivated to get the Small Business Commission up and running and to gather information from the community, from businesses, as to how we can go from the situation that we're in now, where we're looking at so many businesses being put out of business or shut down or prohibited from operating. We need to find a way, instead of pointing the fingers at the small businesses as the problem, we need to make small businesses part of the solution. And the Small Business Commission can do that, and will be doing that, to try to find proactive ways to get the input from the business owners and the small business community as to how we can pivot from being shut down to being to a point where we can reopen and where we can function. I always like to use the example in my own business of OSHA. They would come in and they would do a courtesy inspection, no penalties, not in a punitive way, where they would go through your business and point out areas that needed to be remedied or looked at, and give you suggestions on how you could comply with the regulations. And they did this as a courtesy in a proactive manner, and there was no penalty, there was no shutdown, there was no fines of any kind. They'd come back for 45, 60 days later to see how you did. And because of the way that they presented it, you almost got to the point where you really got excited about seeing how well you could do to comply with the regulations. And it was a terrific program. It really brought an awareness for my employees and myself about safety on the job, but it was done in a very proactive, collaborative manner with the business. And I think the same thing can be applied with the businesses that are subject to being prohibited from operating. For instance, it seems very odd to me that a huge big box store like a Costco or a Walmart, or the chain stores like Safeway and Albertsons, are able to manage the amount of traffic and customers that they do, yet provide them with their ability to purchase supplies and to buy goods and services, yet do it with public safety and health in mind, and to monitor it and to manage it in a way that lets the business stay open and gives the public the ability to buy what they need. If a company that large, with that amount of square footage and that amount of employees and that amount of customers can do it, and do it well and effectively, it seems to me that a 50 or 60 seat restaurant, or a 30 or 40 seat bar, or a gym that has a capacity of 40, 50 people at any given time, can replicate that same kind of a model to allow themselves to open, yet be very cognizant of the health issues, and not have to be forced into foreclosure or bankruptcy. And we're seeing this, and I have to be honest with you, my stomach's in a knot over this whole thing. I've been in this situation where you go home Thursday night at 5 o'clock and Friday morning payrolls due, and at Thursday night at 5 o'clock, there's no money in the bank. It's a horrible feeling, and we have so many businesses that are going through that many, if not most, will never recover, if ever reopen. So I think our calling is to do something proactive now, and to do it quickly. And I'm thinking of ways, and I suggested this at this past Tuesday's board meeting, have health department officials or medical community officials contact the businesses that are most affected by the shutdown, particularly the food service industry, the restaurant industry, the salon industry, and all the mom and pop stores. Have them be contacted, and an official from a health agency or medical community go in and say, now listen, if you do this, 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 and this, you can reopen and you can go back into business as long as you follow these protocols, much like they're being replicated at the big box stores. It seems to me that the restaurants could have a reservation only type of a situation where between 12 and 1, we can allow 8 or 9 customers in, and then at 1 to 2, another 8 or 9, and 2 of them have to sit over at this side of the room, and 4 of them have to sit at this side of the room. And the same applies for a gym. You put your name down between a time frame, and they allow just a certain amount of members in at a certain time, then they leave and the place is scrubbed down, and then a new group comes in. But it saves the business from having to shut down and keep some semblance of cash flow coming into the business. And cash flow, the cash is king. And when you have more going out than's coming in, you're not going to be around very long. And even these $1 trillion bailouts and stimulus packages that we're hearing about, when you break it down on a per business basis, it really is not all that much money when it comes to operating a business. If you throw $10, $20, $30,000 at a business, it sounds like a lot of money, but the cash flow requirements of any business these days, that's just a shot in the arm. I should say a Band-Aid on a scab, and it may be a little shot in the arm for a few weeks, but that's about it. It has to be sustainable and consistent to get a business to remain operating. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to find collaborative ways to instruct our businesses that are told that they cannot operate, and then be in a position that when things can loosen up as far as the CDC requirements and things of this nature, they're ready to go and pivoted into reopening. It costs as much to reopen a shuttered business as it does to start a business from the bottom up scratch, particularly the restaurant business and the food industry business. They've got to get the produce in and the staffing and the all the related requirements that come with serving fresh food and all the essentials that they have to go through. So that's one thing that the Small Business Commission is going to be utilizing, and gathering information from the community and from the business community on how to get into a position where we can pivot and be ready to reopen at the drop of a hat. The other good thing that's happened is County Administrator Huckleberry, as of yesterday, has announced his formation of what he calls Pima County Back to Business, or PCB2B. I don't know if all of you have heard that. Have you heard his latest memo on this? But it's the purpose of the task force will be to establish a framework of hygiene and physical distancing standards that need to be developed to begin to reopen in a limited phased manner the commercial and business activities that may have been suspended or substantially interrupted during this time. And he's looking to get this committee to be formed with representatives from restaurants, hotels and resorts, chambers of commerce. So obviously the Metro Chamber will have and should have a seat at that table. Gyms, daycares, personal hygiene services and attractions, film and live performance theaters and event centers, and representatives of other industries may be added as time goes on. So here's another body that will be working on a more focused, specific group of industries that are really impacted by this virus. And this is a great opportunity for the chamber, the Tucson Metro Chamber, and all the chambers in the area, as well as the Small Business Commission, to collaborate and find ways to get us through this so we're not shut down to the point where we won't be able to reopen. So he's going to be coming out next week with Mr. Huckleberry is with some more details on this commission, on this committee, and the Tucson Chamber will have I think a very pivotal role in it, as well as allowing the businesses and the industries that are most impacted to have a voice and a say in how they can help to get their own businesses back up and running.
All right, I was on mute.
Oh.
That's great. I'm excited to hear more about the task force. There's a question, is the task force open to the general public or is it invitation only?
As far as membership,
Yes. No.
it'll,
Yeah.
at this, the meetings, I'm sure will be open to the public. Everything will have to be done like this meeting is through telecommunication or Zoom or things of that nature because of social distancing. But the membership will be to specific industries, and I think Mr. Huckleberry is making it flexible so that he's outlined and notated a number of industries, but there may be more industries that he would suggest be added to this commission. So I think if there are folks who are good representatives of the industries he's already suggested, that it would be a good idea for organizations such as the Chamber to pass those suggestions on to Mr. Huckleberry. Each supervisor gets one position per supervisor to appoint to that board. The chambers are already included in that. So it's going to be, I think, more of a focused task force of specific industries that are most impacted negatively.
Great. I'm excited to hear about that. That's really great.
Yeah, well, all we've heard thus far is you can't be in business. You got to shut down.
Right.
You can't have customers. You can't be open. And we don't care what you're going through. And we don't, that's not an issue about your payroll, about your employees. All we care about is that you shut down so that there's no communicable issue with the virus. Well, that communicable issue with the virus is one issue. Now, because of that issue, we've got a whole series of other issues that need to be addressed now. And hopefully this task force, along with the Small Business Commission, will be in a position to do just that. It's great because all we've heard is the health aspect from the health department, and we see the daily rates of infection or hospitalization or intubation, and unfortunately even death. So we need to obviously maintain that level of attention and diligence. But we talk about communities at risk. I think that a community that is of equal risk is the small business community. And they need to be included in this whole conversation, just like the older folks and those with underlying health problems and those with compromised immune systems. Those are communities at risk. We need to put all of our efforts health-wise into protecting them, but we've also got to protect our small business community, and they are at risk.
Supervisor Christy, has there been any talk about reopening the economy ahead of what the state is maybe thinking, or is the county just going to follow Governor Ducey in his timeline as far as reopening things?
We have been told verbally that we're going to work in conjunction with the governor's directives. I should have asked Mr. Huckleberry that question on Tuesday's meeting to make sure I had it on the record. But at this point, the assumptions that we have are that as things progress, the county will progress in conjunction with the governor's directive. The governor, I don't know if you happen to have seen his press conference yesterday. I think that, as he said it, the number one issue that was newsworthy was that hospitals will be able to do elective surgery come May 1st. Unfortunately, what I'm hearing through county officials is their opinion of when a relaxing of the prohibitions or a gradual reopening most likely won't happen till mid to late May. And to me, that we've got to do something before that. There's got to be some alternative plan, because it's very simple. Businesses cannot last that long.
I agree. Are there any other questions from the group?
Sure, I got a question. Supervisor Christy, first, thanks for being here. We always appreciate you spending some time with us. We have been, the chamber has been in kind of a bubble. We have the majority of our members are, in the Tucson metro area, but we also have a few members that are outside of Tucson, so like Vail and Marana and Sahuarita. Can you kind of shed some light on what's happening in some of those smaller communities, and if that the impact is a little bit greater just because of where they are?
I can speak for Vail and Green Valley because they're in my district, and they are very stressed. I have a representative from my office that lives and works out there and has an office in both those communities, and the situation is the same for business owners in those communities as it is for the Metro Chamber businesses. There's two things going on. Of course, is the prohibition of being open for a number of businesses, and maybe a shift to takeout as opposed to dine in, which isn't always such an easy thing to do. And a lot of the restaurants and food industry folks in Vail and Green Valley are experiencing that challenge. But there's also the fear of the general populace of what they might be exposed to if they go in, go outside, and B, go to a restaurant and take takeout food. There has to be some messaging, and I brought that up at Tuesday's board meeting as well, either from the health department and or the county communications department, that will put out the message that it is healthy, it is safe to consume takeout food. But what they're experiencing in those communities is nothing different than what all the members in the Tucson Chamber and in the jurisdictions of Marana, Oro Valley, Sahuarita, and across the country. It's really a very uniform issue that all small business owners are facing. And as I say, my stomach's in a knot, and I stay up at night. And the emails I get from business owners say, "What do I do?" And they try to get these loans that are having a hard time processing, and it's going to take weeks in some cases for them to receive them. And even when they do receive them, is it going to be too late? And if it's not too late, is it going to be enough? It's that uncertainty, and it's that not knowing when the next shoe is going to drop that just creates so much havoc and so much stress. And I know that well. I was in one of the most major retail industries for 3 or 4 decades, and I've been through a lot: the savings and loan crisis, 9/11, recessions, the Gulf Wars, and that time of uncertainty in business can lead to insolvency in business. And what we need to stress today with our small business community is a level of certainty. And what we're seeing is something that continues the uncertainty. We get these timelines of possible reopening, or we're gonna monitor it until May 30th or April 15th. Then April 15th comes along and we're going to extend it for another 2 weeks. Well, how long is this going to go? And that kind of uncertainty is what's so troubling, and to the point where people give up. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
It definitely did. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
If I could just make a comment, Supervisor Christy, I really appreciated your comments at the Tuesday meeting. And one of the things you said that really struck me is not only do we not necessarily have plans for how businesses transition to the easing of social distancing, but if they don't have the plans, they can't prepare. They can't purchase items that they may need, And sometimes that procurement, as you pointed out, takes a long time. So the sooner, even if there is not yet the easing of restrictions, the sooner people know what that path out looks like, the sooner they can prepare for it. And so based on your comments at that meeting, I asked the university's College of Public Health if they could begin to assemble some of those best practices. And they immediately said that they do have experts working on that. I think maybe the best way for us to contribute might be as part of the county's task force, just to be sure that we're providing as much information from the public health side in addition to Pima County's health department.
Well, that's terrific. And the university, you know, they could be some of those folks going to these businesses and saying, look, here are some protocols, here are some steps, here are some safeguards that will comply and align with the public health issues, but also allow you to open up. And it may not be the way you were before, but at least it's not the way you are now. And I think that's terrific. And it's so key that you folks and the Metro Chamber and the university all have a say and a seat at this table. And it is heartening now to see that there's a little bit of shift in the thinking of the county that, okay, you've done a really pretty good job. I mean, a really good job of looking out for public health. I mean, hospitals are not overwhelmed. There are enough beds, enough attendants to those beds, enough ICU beds. Emergency rooms are not obviously being utilized because they've been waiting for this huge surge that doesn't seem to be happening. But nonetheless, we have plenty of facilities available to take care of the virus. So the county has done an excellent job of coordinating all that. They brought in the National Guard, and all the hospitals have collaborated together beautifully. Now they are finally seeing that there is another community that needs just as much help, if not more in some areas, and that's the small business community. And that, I believe, was a result of Administrator Huckleberry's bringing that task force to fruition, of the board putting 5-0 to bring the Small Business Commission back on board. It's imperative that happens. And unfortunately, and I will not mention one of my colleagues' names, but when I gave that particular statement that you're referring to, my colleague turned to me and said, well, that's all in good, Supervisor Christy, but we're not in that world yet. And I really bit my tongue because I wanted to say, okay, it's easy for you to say that because you, are still getting a paycheck and you're sitting up here. So let's see how easy it is for you to say that to somebody who just laid off all their employees or missed a payment on their mortgage or is in foreclosure. Let's see how easy it is. You tell them how easy it is not to be in that world. So I think we've got to keep that mindset and at the forefront of all of our actions at the Pima County Board of Supervisors and in all venues that are business related. Now more than ever, we have to bring the business community together in one voice and really start making some demands. And I think what you just brought up with the university, I think that's a great idea, and they can be so helpful with information. Thank you for saying that.
So the budget is in the works, and I know that you'll be voting on a preliminary budget pretty soon, right? How is all of this impacting the budget or budget plan?
Well, one thing I wanted to do is to continue with the budget hearings, even though there were issues about social distancing and bringing in all the department heads and all the managers to do it. And, you know, there's ways to do that. There's ways to still have the budget hearings to allow for public hearing and transparency. And I think it's extraordinarily essential that whenever we talk about a budget, particularly the annual budget that the taxpayers fund through their property taxes primarily, that it be done in public and in a public setting. Well, that is not going to happen. It appears that the preliminary hearings will more or less just be updates rather than full-blown hearings. But be that as it may, your question basically is how is this going to impact the budget? It's obviously going to have very adverse and negative effects that we're going to have to deal with, because there's the main area where the Pima County derives its budget from, of course, is property taxes, and they always lag behind, 6 months to a year. So that revenue stream should not be too terribly affected, knock on wood, for a half to a full year. But there are state revenue shared incomes that Pima County gets a piece of. In some years, they've been as high as $70-80 million. And of course, those are sales taxes, restaurant taxes, bed taxes, food taxes, highway user revenue funds, gas tax, VLT, those things. And those are all going to be substantially and severely diminished in this economy. And we're looking, I've heard numbers from Mr. Huckleberry, and he doesn't have them finalized yet, but he's got a pretty good feel on them. And he's talking a reduction anywhere from $20 to $40 million of state revenue funds diminished. And that's not sustainable. And that's going to require probably a delay in many projects. Hopefully it won't require furloughs or layoffs or things of that nature, but it may. So that's a significant chunk of change, and it's going to have an impact on how the budget is going to be processed and worked through. So we will be getting updates as opposed to hearings on that issue from Mr. Huckleberry on a regular basis. At least that's what he said at Tuesday's meeting.
Other questions?
I guess I'll just ask one more. So over the past, 4 or 5 weeks, the chamber, our staff has reached out to, all of our members. And I think we came away with the same feeling as you do, with that pit in your stomach, not knowing, what the future holds for a lot of our great relationships and partners here at the chamber. So what words of encouragement, what advice, as someone who is a former, business owner like yourself, what can you offer to our members that can give them a little bit of reassurance, or maybe some tips from you as someone who has been a successful business owner previously?
Well, first of all of these problems that we're talking about and that we're dealing with, they all go away when businesses reopen. So we could talk about throwing money at businesses and loans and bridge loans and grants and things. We wouldn't have to do any of that when businesses reopen. So first and foremost, we need to concentrate on exploring and identifying ways to reopen businesses. That's number one. And that message needs to be sent out to your members, that this chamber and this community and all business entities, including the Board of Supervisors, now have put reopening businesses as a number one priority. If you can express that to your members, I think that will also give them a glimmer of hope. As far as the nuts and bolts issues, I would suggest, and I'm sure most of your members and business owners are already doing it, trying to work out deals with your bank, with your landlord, with your credit card company, with your vendors, with your suppliers. I know that if in my own business life, if I had been given opportunities during some really bad times to realign my expenses, for instance, if during the Gulf crisis or during 9/11, Chrysler Financial, the financing arm of Chrysler Corporation, came to me and said, Steve, we know that this is a tough time for your business, as it is for all of our dealers. What we're going to do on your mortgage is add about 3 or 4 months to you at the back end of your loan, and not have you have to pay for 3 or 4 months. That probably would have given me the opportunity to make decisions that would not have caused as much pain, not only to my employees, but to my vendors and suppliers and all the ancillary people that dealt with my business. And I was not given that opportunity, and consequently, I had to make very painful decisions, not only for myself, but for many people. And if there were opportunities where a business owner can say, look, an occupied space is better than an empty space. Work with me to keep this space occupied. Give me some kind of a plan or something that I can stay in business. I can stay as your tenant, and I'll pay you back. But otherwise, try and find somebody to replace me in this market. There's nobody there that's going to do it. So it's incumbent, I think, upon landlords and property owners to want to work with their tenants to keep them there. So I would suggest that they do that. If there's any kind of way that they can put in abeyance some payments to their vendors and suppliers, it's a whole chain effect. People just think when you open up a door to a business that people come in, open their wallets, drop money, and walk out. But there's so much more to it. There's the cash flow, there's the mortgage, there's the payroll, there's the taxes, there's the supplies, the maintenance, the furniture, fixtures, all of those things that go into it. And the business owners really need to look at their expense side of their financial statement and see what kind of remedies might exist in that area that they can address in order to keep the income side at a point where we can turn that around so it actually does become an income side. But there's no easy answers for that. There's just no easy answers. That's what keeps me up at night.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thanks.
Supervisor Christy, related to that, I wanted to thank you for what the county did to help its tenants by reducing the rent to them.
Well,
is there any?
They didn't reduce the rent. They put it in they postponed it.
Yes, that's.
The tenants are going to
have this time. Yeah.
the same
So,
rent, not right away.
Is there anything else the county can do financially to help small businesses?
I'm a firm believer that throwing money at a problem might give some kind of a temporary solution, but usually it just adds to the debt that the business has to deal with, and that it just postpones the inevitable. So does throwing money at it really solve the problem? That's probably not, because the problem is that the business is not open. And the problem is the business is not allowed to open. So what I think the county should be doing is basically what our whole discussion has evolved around, is to exploring, analyzing, identifying ways to open businesses. And, I understand the need to follow the protocols of the CDC and the governor, and we have to watch the trends. And if I hear flattening the curve one more time, I don't know what I'm going to do. But all those things have to be taken into consideration and looked at and analyzed, but not to the point where the virus actually makes businesses another victim, and that the solution is worse than the problem. So I think if the this task force and the Small Business Commission put all their efforts, energies, and ideas together and formulate policies that really make sense, that to help struggling businesses stay alive and to reopen those that have had to close, that's the best thing that the county can do. The county needs to let the business community that we are going to be back open for business. And if it's just that kind of a statement, that works wonders. But if there's actually something backing up that kind of statement with real proof and action and programs of how businesses can open and be compliant and be safe, I think that's the biggest and best thing that the county can do.
Thank you. Any other
Supervisor,
Yes.
thank you very much for your leadership. I testified at the mayor and council meeting on Tuesday evening, and I kind of opened with, think back to November when a few of you were elected. Did you ever imagine that you would be facing anything like this? And obviously the answer is no, but it takes true leadership to get through this. And I know you and all the other elected officials in the region are all, you know, struggling personally and having your stomachs, like you say, tied in knots, trying to figure out what you can do to help businesses, individuals, you know, citizens, you name it, throughout this community. So thank you for your leadership during this time.
I appreciate those words. You know, I've been through really bad times, so I've come out the other side. So that gives me hope too. But when I think of so many businesses that haven't been through what I've been through over the decades I was in business, and they're facing these things for the first time. I remember the first crisis I had to face and how it was just devastating. And I know that there's so many businesses and business owners that are facing this crisis for the first time of any crisis. And at least I've got, you know, some armadillo scales on my back from this. And but I'm concerned about those that had no idea, no expectation, no planning, no foreseeing of this and how they're able to deal with it. And that's what really is painful.
Absolutely. I would mention, Adam talked a little bit earlier about our outreach, calling all 1,500 members. We have now stood up a restaurant advisory council with Ray Flores as the chair. We had a meeting yesterday. It was our second meeting of the council. You're right to say that restaurants, probably more than any other industry outside of hospitality, has really faced the brunt of a lot of this. But we are working with them, and I will also be working with the Small Business Commission, because I'll be attending their meeting today at 3 o'clock to talk about some of the things that they talked about. And you know, one of the things they said, which was interesting, is this is the challenge about with a lot of this is not just people not being able to come into the restaurant, because, you know, their profit margins, a lot of them are based on beverages. Mm-hmm. And obviously right now they can't serve beverages other than, you know, selling maybe a beer to someone who's doing takeout food. So So getting people back in the establishment is critical for restaurants. So we're trying to figure out creative ways where they can, you know, seat outside, because even if we lift the restrictions, there's still going to be a lot of people in the community who are going to be hesitant initially to say, well, is it safe? Is it, you know, so we're also going to be working with Small Business Commission and others to develop PSAs, other things to make sure that people understand that, yes, it is going to be a safe environment. Things are going to be done so that people can see and understand what safety precautions are being taken by the businesses. So I think a lot of that is going to be important in the messaging as we start to recover, a message of safety, a message that, you know, these precautions are being taken by all of these businesses. And so they are going to the best of their ability, make sure that you are entering a safe environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did bring this up with Dr. Garcia on occasions, the last one being at the last board meeting, saying that the health department and or the communications department of the county needs to come out with some sort of definitive statement saying it is safe to go to these restaurants, it is safe for takeout. And when we make these accommodations, hopefully sooner rather than later, to allow for some kind of a physical presence of customers within the restaurant, that they will know it's safe to do that. And that's imperative. I've been in communication quite a bit with my friend Josh Jacobson from
Mhm.
Lucky Wishbone, and he's been very enthusiastic and helpful on that committee you were referring to. And of course, this task force, one of the industries that was very highly underlined and underscored as participating is the restaurant industry. And I think that's the important thing, is to give the consumer the confidence that it's good to go back to a restaurant now, or when it's deemed okay to go back.
Yeah.
And that's what I call pivoting from closure to having a plan to reopen.
Well, thank you again for that. You talked a little bit earlier about ways the county might be able to assist. The reason I was testifying at the mayor and council meeting is because the mayor and council is looking at, just like the county and Oro Valley, all three jurisdictions are looking at updating their impact fees. But the city council is going to make the decision to keep their impact fees at the same level they are now. So basically suspend any increases for the next 2 years, and then come back in 2 years and sort of readdress the issue back with the consultants and working with us. So you and I have talked quite a bit about impact fees in the past, and that might be one way that the county could help in the situation by suspending the increases that are slated for residential and commercial for transportation impact fees for the next 2 years.
Yeah, it seemed to me that the impact fees that the county was proposing seemed pretty positive to begin with in some areas, even reductions. So am I wrong on that?
There were projected reductions in industrial, but commercial and residential were projected to increase.
Yeah, I remember the commercial real estate folks were pretty happy with the results of those studies. So yes, that's an area that we can collaborate on with the county. And the other one too is property taxes. The county has no control over the payment or the abeyance or the putting off of, or the fees affiliated with not making your property tax payments on time. That all comes from the state legislature and or the governor. There's been quite a bit of dialogue between Beth Ford and the county administrator about the state county treasurers association has made a recommendation that property taxes be delayed and extended the deadline for 3 months. Now there's some pushback from the county administrators because of certain entities that might suffer from that, like fire districts. But according to Beth Ford, she said that there is adequate cash flow in there for 3 months that would cover all of the jurisdictions and the property taxpayers, as well as the districts, that would be virtually no harm to allow people to put off their property tax payments for 3 months, like to June 30th. And the only problem is that Board of Supervisors and the county have no control over that. That comes from the legislature. So perhaps the Metro Chamber can work with the Arizona State County Treasurers Association in general, and Beth Ford in particular, on how to, well, it's going to be difficult if the legislature doesn't come back into session. But if there was some way that we could get to the governor, maybe an executive order, if that's possible, or something to suggest that, hey, let's give our property taxpayers a bit of a break too. And just like the county did with its tenants, put off the payments for 3 months to get through this. And that would be, I think, a very good legislative item for the chamber to get involved with up in Phoenix.
Agreed, and I'll make sure we look into that. Thank you.
It's kind of tough when they're not in session, so.
Great. Well, we have about 5 more minutes. Is there anything else you want to tell us, Supervisor Christy?
Yes. Let's keep our health protocols going. Yes, let's keep our attention on the most vulnerable health-wise folks. You know, they should be sheltered, they should be sequestered, they should be attended to, they should be given priorities. I don't mean to diminish the health issue about the virus. It's horrible, and not one death is worth it. It's and every death is a precious person leaving this world. We have to recognize and respect that. But I think the issue now and the messaging now has to be from organizations like the Pima County Board of Supervisors, this task force that Mr. Huckleberry is creating, the Small Business Commission, all of the chambers, all of the industries, all of the small business entities, is to get together in a collaborative way, unify in one voice that we need to reopen Pima County for business. That's the most important message we can be spreading, and the most important activity we can be doing is finding ways to reopen Pima County for business.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time today. And if there's anything else that we can do to help you, just let us know.
I appreciate that. It's a pleasure, and I'm proud to be associated with the chamber. The old saying, "You're my people." That's where I came from. I came from the business community. I wasn't a member of I didn't come from any political party. I didn't have any political ideology. And my whole experience has been in one area and one area alone, and that's in business. And that's why I'm such a cheerleader for the business community and any organizations that support business. So thank you.
That's what I was just going to say too. We're fortunate to have you as a former business leader and your acumen in business. So we appreciate that. And we thank you for speaking with us today.
Well, thank you, and call me anytime. And I'm looking forward to everybody working together to put Pima County back in business.
Great. Great. And I just want to take a moment and to announce our Knowledge and Noon for tomorrow. Tomorrow, our topic is stimulating our creative community in support of our business community, kind of along the lines of what Supervisor Christy was talking about. We're going to have Tom Heath is going to be our speaker. It's Tucson Helping Tucson Relief for our small business community. So he'll be speaking tomorrow at noon. So please, if you haven't registered, register for that. And we're going to have that. And we thank you, everybody, for coming out today. And again, thank you, Supervisor Christy, for joining us.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.